One of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I want everybody to hear, but I can do that at the recap as well, is, obviously the first one we did 2 weeks ago, we were trying to decide, is this going to be a series? Is this successful? We had a lot of great feedback. So yes, it's a series. We're going to do it every other Wednesday. We chose to do that every other week as opposed to every week, knowing that people are busy now, but as the, states start to open up more, our members are going to get busier, and so are our sponsors. So being cognizant of that, we think if we just do it every other Wednesday, same time, 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern, it's probably going to be the most convenient thing, I think, for us to do. And any feedback that we have from members and sponsors would be awesome. I mean, send emails to us. I mean, obviously, you've got the chat here, so anything you want to say along the way, we'll monitor that. So if you have questions, just make sure that you put in there for if you want everybody to see it, it's not just for panelists. You have to do that for everyone. But we'll monitor that, and if there's good questions that we can't get to, because yesterday we had a call just to go over all the information here, and even without Jack's slides, we went well over an hour. So we'll try to get this, narrowed down, but that's just how much good information are coming from the people that we have here. So real happy about that. So with that, let's get started. So obviously, Jack Lee is a Haiku master for Datassential, and we're really happy. They've been just awesome partners with us to be able to help us put this together and put a lot of time into it to make sure that what we're focusing on is something that's important for all of you that are with us today, that being ICCA and GCIA members and sponsors. So breaking it down, we've got 3 areas we're going to talk about this week, and it's going to be food innovation is one, staffing, operations, and supply chain is another, and then community, what organizations and companies are doing for the community. So with us, we have Steve Sturm. He's the executive chef at Firebirds Wood Fire Grill. RJ Harvey is the director of culinary for Potatoes USA. And Shona Jonson, who is a senior manager of menu development for Chick-fil-A. So again, thanks to all of you for being a part of this, and the information is going to be really exciting. I was just so blown away by everything we talked about yesterday. So I'll stop talking and turn it over to you, Jack.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin, and thanks, RJ, Steve, and Shona, and thanks to all of you for attending too. I do have to say this call always gives me a ton of anxiety because you are all amazing culinarians, and I don't even know how to boil water. So I feel like I'm always sort of out of my depth in these, but I'm going to do my best to share some consumer insight and then hopefully lead a discussion on the 3 areas that Kevin talked about. So I'm going to go ahead and share out my screen, and we'll kick off with a couple of quick slides. So many of you know that you could download a whole bunch of reports on COVID and the latest state opening maps, a bunch of other great information at the Datassential.com coronavirus webpage. Please visit if you haven't had a chance to do so. And we're going to start by talking about food and innovation. So one of the questions we've asked consumers is, what are the foods that you miss or crave the most from restaurants? And the thing that we found surprising initially was that Mexican actually came up number 1, but you can see a number of other food items types that consumers say, I'm just missing this, right? I can't get it at home. It's something I want from restaurants. The thing that's interesting is the sequence that you see here does not mirror the same sequence of just what foods people love overall, right? Mexican's at the very top. It's popular overall, but it's not the number 1 thing overall in terms of, general popularity. Seafood shoots really high up on the list. And then you have things like mac and cheese, which people love, but we've been eating so much mac and cheese at home that it's not something we necessarily miss. So I think some of you may actually use our system that we call Flavor, which is basically any food, ingredient, trend, beverage, recipe, you name it, almost 4,000 different, essentially, things you could put in your mouth from flavors and beyond. We track, do people know what that is? Have they tried it before? Do they love it? Do they hate it? Do they fall somewhere in between? And we said, let's take a look at that information, right? Not specific to the pandemic. Let's just look at what people love. So you can see on the right, the percentage of folks who love, sushi is 24%. And then some of those other types of items that we just saw on the previous chart. And we said, what if we take the love score, right? Do people love this thing overall, and sort of mash it up with whether people are really missing it right now? and that produces a chart that looks like this, where the dark bars, the gray bars, are whether people love that or not, and the pink ones are whether people are missing that thing from restaurants currently. And you see that there's some areas where the pink bars are taller than the gray bars. These are items that people are missing right now even more than they normally love, right? Mexican food is there, Asian food is there, and some others. And then you have those other ones where people love these things, but they don't really miss them because maybe they've been able to get this at home already, grilled chicken, mac and cheese, etc. So as your stores start to reopen, think about which items on your menu may represent true pent-up demand, right? The first thing that's probably going to happen is people can go back to their favorites. But think about the category that it falls into. Like if one of your favorite items is something that's not that dissimilar from a format that maybe consumers can make at home, then maybe that isn't where all the pent-up demand is. But if your popular items are things that are just oh, no way would a person ever be able to make this in their own kitchen, you'll probably see an explosion in initial sales in those products or those menu items instead. And that's sort of how we see the sequence as happening, right? We actually think there is probably a sequence. Imagine the very first visit back that guests have to your restaurant. On that very first visit back, they will almost surely go with their favorite, right? On that second visit back, they might say, yeah, you know what? I'm still going to stick with the tried and true. By the time you get to the third and fourth and fifth visits, now they're going to sort of say, I want to try something new. I expect to see something new. And eventually they're going to be sort of upset if you don't have something new for them to try. So I would say as your restaurants open up, the receipts that you get from the first couple of weeks, that menu mix may not necessarily reflect what your menu mix is going to look like a couple months down the road. Those first couple of weeks are going to be tried and true favorites, but eventually you'll see a hunger for innovation return, I think, pretty quickly, right after the second or third visit. So with that in mind, I wanted to have a conversation real quickly around just this notion of virtual innovation. And I'm going to stop my screen share so we can see everyone in bigger picture windows. I think RJ, Steve, Shona, you're all sort of doing a little bit about this. Would any of you like to tell us about what you're doing virtually as it relates to innovation?
Sure, so I'll go ahead and start, Jack. Here at Potatoes USA, a lot of what we do focuses around the craveability factor behind potatoes. We already know that they are America's #1 vegetable. And so how do we push it past that point? So innovation has always been at the peak of what we do from a culinary perspective. Once COVID hit, our live innovation sessions with operators kind of came to a halt, right? So we didn't want to stop that train of innovating items for operators and providing a service to the food service industry. And so we have continued to do innovation sessions with operators through Zoom, through Microsoft Teams. And what this allows us to do is to still showcase what we are suggesting and putting forward in terms of what's going to be craveable for your customers and so forth, but also still be able to work with you one-on-one and highlight, what is the purchasing intent of that product? What is the uniqueness score of that product? And we're actually using Datassential scores to gauge what that is. And so that's been a huge help for us. And it's also been a huge help for the operators that we've been interfacing with. Another thing that's really been key is not just hosting it virtually, but also having some sort of interactive approach to it. So what we've done with the operators that we've worked with is we've sent them, samples of, say, a seasoning mix for a new potato dish that we're working on that we think fits their brand and their concept. That way they can also play around with some of these flavors before we have our virtual meeting so they can still get to taste and experience what's going on. In addition to that, really high quality digital assets has been a part of what we're showcasing. I know I personally have been blasting a lot of high quality digital assets of recipes that I've been testing and putting out there on social media. And that not only creates an environment of getting people inspired throughout the industry, but it also creates a touch point for operators that we may not be working with currently to be interested and say, hey, that fits my brand concept. I'm going to reach out to Potatoes USA. We need some new potato innovation.
That is awesome. Because can we talk about let's use a Zoom meeting as an example. So where does that take place? Are you or the other party literally inside your kitchens, or are you doing more like a business meeting, sitting wherever you do work during the day?
Well, so I'm fortunate enough where I happen to be working in my kitchen right now at home. And so, my whole office team is working virtually from their individual homes. But when we're working with operators and we're doing these digital meetings, it's kind of 50-50 split. In the past, what we've seen is that half of their team may be working at home. Maybe it's their marketing teams that are working from home, but then the culinarians, the ones that are typically in the R&D kitchen, if their offices and corporate centers are open, some of them may be stationed at their corporate headquarters. So it's kind of been all over the map. There's no real tried and true method, but it's kind of just still good to get everybody together.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks so much for that. Shona, I think you've been doing some of this too. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I keep getting this warning that my internet connection is unstable, which I think probably all of you guys experience at some point in time. So real quickly, I want to say hello and a shout out to everybody, and just been thinking and praying for each and every one of you. Kevin asked me specifically to talk about how we're doing R&D and what it engages, just because I happened to be on the phone with him one day when I had just a ton of product come in, and you literally couldn't even see what would formerly be my dining room because of all the boxes everywhere. We actually, in the Atlanta area, we actually had a COVID case come through our building, and when we were asked to leave, we thought we were only leaving for a couple of days, and then we haven't been able to be back in that building without special permission from legal and from others. So we've had to adjust around that. As far as our R&D as a whole, what we are doing has definitely shifted. So we basically scrapped our plan for 2020. We had to just start from ground zero and say, what is essential? What are we going to continue with? Versus what do we need to postpone. That also meant taking our budgets back down to zero. So what we're doing is we're basically planning for 90 to 120 days, and then we're reevaluating every 30 days just because it's a very unstable situation. So for example, if we had a limited time flavor of something, that's been postponed. We've also obviously had to postpone any customer work if we were bringing customers in for centralized taste test or anything along that lines. We've had to delay all that. We've delayed all of our external sensory testing that we would have completed, or anything that we would have had contractors to come in, because we now know, or as of right now, are relying only on internal staffing. So as part of doing that, we are repurposing and redeploying people. For example, we've taken one of our R&D people and put her to help support the packaging team, because there's so much in grab out and to go that is necessary. We've had to redeploy people to help with how do you have proper spacing in the kitchen. And then in some cases, we've absorbed team members from other departments on how do you help digital staff and grow. Other work, we've actually sped up, or we've created new work. So we had to quickly look at, if your business is predominantly drive-through or on demand, what are bundles that you could offer for families? Because family, it's more so for families versus the individual that's coming in for lunch. We had done some testing of a meal kit. We haven't done near the excellent work that many of you guys have done, but we did offer one individual meal kit that we just rolled out last week. Packaging has been crazy. We got feedback from guests. Many of you probably may have seen this. The lid on top of the milkshake was open. That was making the guest feel uncomfortable. So we had to figure out, how do you still serve a shake that the guest feels comfortable with it, or even an ice cream cone? How do you, if you're predominantly throwing condiments in a bag, how do you serve those condiments, because people don't want them touching their fries? So that's an example of some of our work that has, sped up. We've also gone to limited menus where necessary, based on the concept, whether it's a licensee, a mall location, based on the community guidelines and the business environment. It's a flexible menu based on the situation that's there. One of the things that we did not expect for plan for as much were ingredient disruptions or short in supply on certain things. So we may have had to quickly approve a new plant or a new line. We've had to do things such as replace lettuce hearts with whole head lettuce. So very dynamic. One of the most encouraging that the team has really enjoyed is our PR team decided to do something called nightly nuggets. So we have every night had someone sharing a recipe using Chick-fil-A items. And that's not been the culinary team. It's actually just been other people as part of the Chick-fil-A team. And initially that request was for 30 days, and then that's now going to be extended through the end of May. So, you know, that the team has really enjoyed that. And then the next thing we're focusing on is, you know, what's our next phase of R&D as our kitchens do begin to open up and as we move forward. And then one last thing, because I don't want to take all the time, we've really tried to encourage the team to connect. We connect on a daily basis where we can, at least for 30 minutes. We've tried to share ideas and how to engage. We're encouraging people, don't worry if your child has to run across the screen in their diaper. That's the reality. Or if your homeschooler needs to come to you to homework when you're in a meeting. We're all working in a very dynamic and ever-changing workplace. And then we've tried to, whenever possible, to donate or share with others the work that we're doing at home. So I did a ton of work with cookies, and my neighbors were just thrilled to get cookies. And, you know, the one thing we're still struggling with, all of us, is how do you handle all the shippers and other things that you would normally recycle? Where do you put all that? So I have a garage full of shippers right now. That's kind of how we've evolved our R&D during this time.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that. So you touched on something that we haven't even talked about, even in our warm-up call yesterday. So this is for everyone, Shona, Steve, RJ. You mentioned the sensory piece and the taste testing. Will you consider moving forward with new items without doing the same type of sensory you've done in the past, or is that still an essential step to get something onto the menu?
Yeah, I think it's still an essential step to get something on the menu. We'll probably move to, we actually have spent quite a bit of time talking about this, we'll probably move to less stringency for items that have lower risk. But obviously, if it's something with chicken, we want to do it right. So we may need to delay or postpone what that item would be until we can get that customer feedback. What's interesting, we do a ton of sensory testing when we're trying to prove new facilities or new lines, or you know, just get feedback on things. And we've actually tried to train up internal teams with that and been doing virtual sensories where we'll, similar to what RJ's doing, where he's doing product displays, but we're actually sending products to people's home with instructions and doing those virtually. We have a great benefit that a number of our team has already gone through some formal sensory training. So we had some good strength to fall back on.
Yeah, that's awesome. Steve, I would imagine, well, can you tell us how often historically your menu would change normally, and what it looks like now and what you're doing right now in the pipeline?
Sure. Yeah. So typically our menu would change twice a year, and it's not a drastic change. It's more seasonality type things, looking at, you know, obviously the P-mix, what's selling, what's not, availability, those kinds of things. And so obviously this has kind of upset that whole calendar. Like most restaurants, we reduced the size of our menu as we went from no dine-in guests to only takeout and delivery. And then as we started to open up, we opened up with a limited menu, which is a little bit more than just the takeout and to go. And then we have a plan to transition 4 weeks from an opening date to go to a more permanent menu, which we are taking this opportunity to reduce a few menu items at that time. And so it's obviously adjusted what we're doing. Most of my R&D time right now is focused on more short-term promotions, take-home meals for Mother's Day, Easter. In addition to that, we're doing a weekly meal once a week for our team members, where we serve basically each team member gets a meal for 4 people. And so we're doing new items for that and just having some fun with them, giving them something new to eat, and it helped us keep engaged with our team members.
So, historically, maybe, leading into summer, you'd be getting ready to do a promo around, flavors of summer, and then you have your fall flavors that hit, and then your holiday flavors. Is that whole thing thrown off, or are we no longer thinking about seasonality of flavors and what sort of goes with each season? Or are we still doing some of that these days?
Well, we're definitely doing it. I mean, the seasonality is definitely just kind of how we develop most of our items for our LTOs. The timing has shifted. Normally, we would start our LTOs for summer, come middle of June, and run until August. So we're going to be shifting this back to not start until sometime in July. At this point, we're just kind of seeing when we get to open, when it gets a little bit of normalcy, and then we have kind of a playbook to pop in when we're ready to do that, when our guests are kind of through that initial back for one or two visits and now looking for something that kind of new news for them.
Yeah, so maybe this is a question for all of you. You're all at home, you have your kitchens at home, you don't have access to the amazing corporate kitchens that you normally do. What are you missing most from that right now, and have you found a way to overcome that?
So I'll address that first, Jack. Refrigeration space is probably the biggest thing for me, refrigeration and freezer space. Outside of that, the way I'm addressing it is really just kind of planning out my week, right? Buying what I need so there's not a lot of food waste. Planning it out so that I keep a certain amount in the refrigerator as I'm going through the testing. But that's the biggest thing is just having storage. So
just storage.
I was going to just ask a quick question on that. So are you getting deliveries daily, because you can use things from grocery stores or whatever? Are you physically going out or are you getting it delivered?
Yeah, so I'm physically going out. Again, I'm making sure that I'm following proper safety precautions and wearing masks and all that stuff when I go to the stores, trying to mitigate the amount of times that I have to go and do store runs. That's kind of key. But then on top of that is, finding product for me has been a little bit difficult, especially when you're buying retail, right? So in the potato industry in particular, we at first saw a huge drop in retail stores of fresh potatoes, and then frozen potatoes were off of the shelves. And in some instances, frozen potatoes are still difficult to find in grocery stores. So just finding the right stores that had certain product was a challenge initially, but things have started to normalize quite a bit.
So if you wear your chef jacket to the grocery store, do people just sort of get out of your way and let you get whatever you want, or they don't really do that?
Jack, I'm 6'4" and 300 pounds.
You get it anyways, yeah. So, this concept of virtual innovation is really sort of fascinating, and I guess the things that you're doing now, once we get back into the office, you're going to continue doing this stuff, or have you made any long-term changes, or is this just until we get back to work? Or back into the office, I should say. What do you think?
Well, for us, I see it going back to what we normally did. Now, I think some of this has actually helped, especially working with some of our vendor partners. You can do a little bit more groundwork ahead of time, and that way, when you're together, you actually get more out of the session that you're working with. So, to me, I think that's probably the big change. We'll definitely do more of that, but I don't see the day in, day out being in one of the restaurants, working with the chef team, coming up with items, and then presenting it to taste panel. I don't see that changing for us.
Yeah, so I'll use that as a transition point. So I was chatting with Kevin about doing some sort of a contest for the ICCA, GCIA community. Some of you may already be using our Food Studio tool. Some of you may know about it. Some of you may have no idea what the heck I'm talking about. I'm going to share my screen and show you something sort of cool. And we're going to play a game right now where if you use chat, use it to throw out ideas, and we're going to build a menu item together. And then after that, I'll see who of you wants to have access to the same tool for a 2-week period. You can make your own menu items, and then we will see who makes the best menu item and crown a winner and maybe award some sort of a prize for those of you that want to participate in the contest. But this is a version of virtual innovation that I think really makes a ton of sense right now. You should be able to see my screen. This is something we have that's called Food Studio, and I'm going to ask Shona, Steve, and RJ if you can monitor the chat and just see what people are typing in, because we're going to build an item together. basically what this does is it lets you sort of just build an item from scratch, and it gives you feedback as you go. So if you say, hey, I want to do a barbecue jalapeno burger, each aspect of what you create, you get instant feedback on, oh, is barbecue sauce, is it trending? Is our jalapenos trending? Do those flavors go together? And it predicts if people are going to like it or not, as well as how rare your item is. And it also sort of automatically uses AI to say, oh, you're making a burger, so we're going to compare this to other burgers. And you can keep adding things into the ingredients. So let's actually build an item. I don't know, RJ, should we maybe do a potato-based item? That would probably seem to make sense. Do we do maybe some sort of a loaded fries?
Yeah, loaded fries are all the rage right now. We should definitely do those.
Should we start with jalapeno, or give me another ingredient that we start with?
Let's do bacon, Jack.
Okay, I feel like we've cheated a little bit. Now, give me a couple more ingredients that we add to our bacon-loaded fries.
So Matt's throwing in from the chat candied bacon and avocado. We're getting some sliced mushroom, sriracha.
I think if we put all that in there, we're gonna have a very strange item. But let's see what happens. So, candied bacon, avocado, sriracha. It's starting to not really go all that well together, but it's okay. So what the system actually does, it says, well, let's take a look at sriracha. Sriracha pairs well with two other things in our dish. It pairs well with avocado, it pairs well with bacon, but you don't normally see sriracha on your loaded fries. And it sort of renders a prediction based on what we've created over here. It's an appetizer. It sort of figured that out automatically. The consumer level of interest is probably going to be moderate, and the rarity is sort of in that mid-moderate range. But we could say, you know what, maybe the avocado was a little strange. If you pull the avocado out of that, our appeal starts actually going up, not because people don't like avocado, but because avocado perhaps was not pairing so well with the other items in our creation. What else should we put in our bacon-loaded fries? So we have sriracha, bacon-loaded fries right now. What else can we add to this?
Somebody put sweet pickled jalapeno.
Sweet
Green onions.
Let's do the green onion. Green onion. What else? Are we done? We actually have a decent item so far. It's predicting pretty strong appeal, moderately unique. I say we got to make it more over the top. You'll even see on the right here these little floating things. These are suggestions that the system gives you that you may want to consider. You want to do an aioli on here, a peppered bacon.
We got an aged cheddar thrown out.
Queso.
Hoisin on there, Jack.
Hoisin, did you say?
Queso.
Oh, queso.
Yeah. Sour cream.
Sour cream. And I think this is our dish for now. So we created something that's pretty strong and moderately unique at the same time. And we can go ahead and save this. I'm going to go ahead and save this one down. I've saved it now to my library. And we could sort of come back to this later, but we've literally just created something in real time where you can see every component. Is it trending? Is it not trending? Do these things go together? You could even sort of see what types of consumers are more or less likely to like this. Do we want to look at this among men, women, Gen Z, boomers? It helps you sort of innovate in real time when you don't have your entire kitchen, let's say, at your disposal. So sort of paper concept creation driven by AI and a whole lot of data behind it. So here's the contest. For anyone who's interested, we can get you access to this tool for a couple-week period. You could play with it and create the best item that you can. And then we will take the items that you all create and we will actually test those online with consumers and see who has the highest scoring item at the end of all this. Keep in mind the predictions that this
Hey,
system
Jack, here's
makes.
a question for you. They were asking, can you adjust the appeal by regionally, or does it have to be national?
Yeah, so you can actually adjust your settings by region, by consumer type, men, women, generation. Here you have regions over here as well, and it'll recalibrate everything for you. So keep in mind the predictions it makes is it's essentially a very, very smart guess that the computer is making based on the data it knows. we really ultimately want to see what consumers think too, but this helps you go down the path of making good starting items that you can then refine based on consumer feedback. So I'm going to launch a poll right now, and if you're interested in getting access and trying to join this contest, you can. If you want to make a cool menu item, just hit yes. If you would like to learn more about this but don't want to join in the contest, hit no. And if you just not interested at all, hit the bottom no option. And Kevin, we have to come up with a prize of some sort, right? So I guess this will be the official GCIA, ICCA. We crown a winner. I don't know if it's just bragging rights or if you actually get something sort of cool. Maybe you get a pass to the opening day at Disney World in late June when that comes to pass.
Well, and if we do that, Jack, here's what we could do. We have 2 storage units filled with things from our past events. So we'll take them through the prize cabinet and they can pick out whatever they like.
I love that. It's like when you go to like play skee ball and you get the tickets, you can trade them in for whatever you want. Yeah, it's like the culinary professional version of that. So the way this will work is we'll figure out the next couple of days how to get you access. And then you can use this for a while. Come up with one dish that you think is the best. And we will test your one dish and everyone else's one dish with consumers, actually. Whoever scores the best will be crowned the winner. So just another example of what virtual innovation might look like.
Hey, Jack, you guys have to up the ante. People are asking to get a bottle of wine out of Kevin's cellar.
Kevin, that's on you. And I see more yes votes coming in now as soon as you mentioned that. So I think you hit on something.
Hey, wait a minute.
So if we could talk a little bit about operations and staff, I'm going to go and share out my screen again. I have just a couple of very quick slides to share. So here's an interesting thing, right? So this is what the working population in America looked like before the pandemic. About 66% of America was working. Other people just not in the workforce. And then as we get to today, of that 66%, 31%, so almost half of that number, is working, but now working from home. 18%, so about a third of that number, are working just as they were before, still going into work, or maybe they were already working from home before. They haven't changed. Then you have about 18% that have been laid off or furloughed, which is a pretty big number, right? Almost 30% of what that working population was initially, which actually matches up very well with what the assumed unemployment rate is at this point. So we want to understand this 18% of consumers that have been laid off or furloughed, not just restaurant workers, but from all industries. And I think you all sort of know this in your brands already, but this is a look at what unemployment benefits look like by state. The blue stems, this is the maximum state benefit on an individual basis. Depending on the state, it's usually around half of what what your normal salary was. In California, it's like 47%. Other states, it's up or down a few percentage points. But on top of that, for a limited period of time, the federal government's adding an extra $600 a week to that benefit. So that depending on the state you're in, you could be getting a check of $1,000 plus. And I think you've probably seen this in some of your brands too, but this may actually be more than some restaurant workers were making when they were actually working, right? They might be getting more from unemployment and the $600 additional subsidy. So we asked of those consumers that have been laid off or furloughed, if they were offered their job back today, like instantly, like, hey, you can come back into work tomorrow. Of that, just about half said they would return to work immediately, right? So it's not a foregone conclusion they're all ready to come back. But 40% said, I'm going to wait for unemployment to run out first before I come back into the workplace. And about 6% said, I wouldn't come back at all. So I guess this is a question, Shona and Steve, your brands might be in a slightly different situation because of things that you've done to engage your staff throughout this process. But can you talk to us about what it's like, or if you've had to bring back any staff, and maybe not just for your brand, but how you see it playing out for restaurants in general, and especially for restaurants that maybe have not been as progressive in keeping their staff engaged? Shona, you want to maybe kick that off?
Sure. So I have to say that, I'm a little biased, but I think we have the most amazing operators, and most of them take incredibly great care of their teams. And they've done a lot to try to retain team members wherever possible. We haven't been able to everywhere because locations have just absolutely closed. I think that it's all across the board, depending on where the store may be and who the operator is. Some operators are having to beef up and add additional staff, or they've gotten staff from restaurants that may be closed or slowed down. Some operators are going to have to start totally over with new training, depending on who decides to come back to work. I know I'm a little selfish, but I will say specifically on our R&D team, we relied very, very heavily on contract support staff, which we no longer have. So I am having to refresh myself on how to clean out a henny penny and how to do dishes plus make something delicious. And, it's kind of going back to the roots. It's all in how you work lean. I think that for operators who really, really value their people are going to want to come back to work for them, and they're going to find a way. I think one of the biggest things they're going to struggle with is childcare, depending on, how long it goes. If they're normally working when their children are in school, we're going to struggle with that.
Yeah. Steve, I know you've done some things for your staff as well that looks like it's going to pay some dividends too.
Yeah, so I mentioned that once a week we're doing a family meal for our team members, and that enabled us from the beginning to have weekly check-ins, talk to them, engage with them, let them know how valued they are, and that's been a huge help. And so as of right now, we've got 16 restaurants that have reopened, at least of what each state will allow. Some of them are at 25% capacity inside the four wall with different on the patios, and some of them are 50%. And overall, our staffing return has been very high so far. I've had just a couple of restaurants that we had a little more attrition in the kitchen, and it was similar where their cooks are getting paid more specifically for not working, where we have good relationships, which is a majority of the restaurants. We're able to walk them through, hey, that's a short-term thing. That's going to be ending at the end of June. That's short-term thinking. So in some cases, they're working part-time as opposed to coming back full-time. That way they can take advantage of still working but still collecting some benefits from the government. So we've been very flexible with their schedules. And then one of the big thing is we focused through some training of everybody who comes back, just explaining what the safety and how much we're concerned about their safety as much as our guests, and having them feel very comfortable with the PPEs we have, making sure that they know the processes that have changed, why we've changed, how we reduce touch points, those kinds of things. And that's been so far been very well received, but we're 2 weeks into it at the most right now.
For any of your brands, did it feel like staff was at first timid coming back and concerned about safety? Did they express concerns, or were they excited to just jump into it like before?
Majority of our people were extremely excited, couldn't wait to come back to work. Like, they loved coming in on our Team Member Tuesday just to check in. Hey, when are we going to open? Can't wait to get back. Great to see. And you're having to tell them, hey, don't hug this other employee that you're happy to see. Keep your social distance. But overall, it's been pretty positive. I think some of the younger folks that work for us, that maybe the hosts that are a little bit more underage, that have parents, they're probably a little more concerned from a parent than probably the person. But overall, it's been pretty positive. They couldn't wait to come back to work, majority of them.
And I'm going to just throw out a theory, and maybe I'm totally off base on this, but having been to restaurants, whether it's limited service restaurant, place like a Chick-fil-A or full service restaurant, you see the staff in there like busting their ass, doing a lot of things, and just doing their job. Really, I don't see a lot of like hesitancy or stuttering or like staff scared to do an activity. It seems like they're just in the hustle and bustle of making things work. And I have to believe that as people, they're not that different from the typical American. Right now, a lot of us just, that aren't working in restaurants feel very frozen in place. like, because, we're just scared we haven't done some of these things in a long time. But it seems like once you get into the mix of it and start having to do all the things that it takes to be a food service worker, you eventually just say, okay, this is my job. And I think some of those barriers and some of that fear just sort of melts. It sounds like pretty quickly. I mean, do you think that's a reasonable, examination of the case? And is there something to learn for, just society more broadly, that once the rest of us get in the thick of things again, it'll just start feeling normal again at some point?
Well, I think the restaurants it's such a small community, and them coming back in and seeing their team members, they jump right back into kind of where they left off. Obviously, we're focused on, kind of the less touch points and the safety measures. So there's a little bit of newness there. But once they kind of get that in the habit and, the repertoire, what I've seen so far is they can't wait to come in, and they're excited to see each other. And it's right back to kind of restaurant as usual from their perspective. And I think that having a job where you're doing kind of the things that you've always done gives some normalcy to their lives, which I think has been sorely missed. I think just having that, making them feel safe from a normalcy standpoint. And I also think that's the same thing from the guests that we're seeing come in. They couldn't wait to come out because they just don't want to be in their house any longer. They want someone else to cook and clean up, and they just want to come out and hang out with us. We're have such a tight guest pool that just love us, that we have great relationships with. And they couldn't wait to come back in and support us.
So I'm going to put you all. Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, Steve, you guys, now you've increased your takeouts, a lot during this time, obviously, and now you're reopening restaurants. Can you speak a little bit to, your feeling on, is this going to continue with takeout? And if so, how do you adapt your operation to handle that? Will you have a space, by the front door or somewhere where you can, bring in the drivers, third-party drivers and other people that want to come pick up their food?
Sure. Yeah. So we've seen in the restaurants we've opened is that our takeout is nowhere near where it was before the pandemic, because we had to quickly shift to doing takeout delivery. We created a lot of systems that we didn't have we were already doing DSPs. So we had some of it, but obviously doing it to the level we were doing almost 10 times as much to go business as we were doing. So we had to rethink the logistics of that. And so we've been doing that for the last 8 weeks. And so we kind of figured out a lot of that. And so now that we've reopened, and one of the good things is we're only doing 25 or 50% capacity, we still have that ability to do a lot of the takeout. And we're not doing quite as much takeout as when we didn't have dining rooms, but it's still 4 times as much as what we had before. And in some cases more than that before this whole coronavirus. So we're anticipating that we're going to keep a lot of the to-go business that we have now created, because in the past maybe people didn't think of us as that kind of place, although that was growing for us. But this just basically put that on steroids, and I think it will open up a lot of opportunities as people come back in the restaurant. So so far, I think it's been pretty positive, and I think we've got it figured out. And we certainly are looking at it from a standpoint of new designs, and we were already in the process of doing that: dedicated door, dedicated space, phone systems, those kinds of things. We already had a lot in the pipeline. This has obviously sped that up a little bit for the new store designs, and then we're already changing up how our signs are. In the parking lot where we had dedicated spaces, but they would still come in. We changed those, so when you arrive, call this number and we'll run it out to you. So that's something that we made an adjustment pretty quickly on.
Are your stores doing face masks for all workers, or face coverings for all workers, or just back of house, just front of house?
Everyone wears face masks for now.
Shona, what's the Chick-fil-A policy?
Same thing. We have really safe service is our number one. I'm sorry, I'm sitting outside and I have a bug that's just flying around me. This is the only place I can get any kind of quiet. we have safe service is our number one priority, and that really includes our team member care as well as our customer care. So we have very clear guidelines around face mask. We've just now been able to provide face masks that the operators can source around hand washing, food safety, social distancing, frequent cleaning, contactless pay, those types of things. And I wanted to just mention a minute ago, and I didn't want to interrupt. Really, I think in our case, and probably the case across the industry, I think you have a heart. People generally have a heart to serve those guests. And I think when the guests trust us to come in, we are pleased to offer the comfort and the hospitality and the food that they expect and have come to enjoy. And I think that will help all of us in our businesses. If you treat your people well and you give them an opportunity to excel at what they do great, I think that will help us retain people and even gain people that maybe we didn't look at before because we were fully staffed with people who weren't interested in coming back to work. And maybe, we've seen some great opportunities open up for others who really care.
I think this has been... Go ahead, Shona. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, I'll just share one other real quick thing. I think sometimes in our support centers and our leadership, we worry more about our team members and our operators than we need to. They are so used to change. That is why they are in this business, and they think so well on their feet. If you give them the guidelines and the boundaries, they go far beyond what myself or anyone else could ever imagine if we just trust them and give them the boundaries around it.
Yeah, it's so true. I'm going to put you all on the spot real quick. So this is for everyone, including Kevin. How long do you think it'll be that face coverings are the norm in restaurants? If you had to put an over/under on it, what do you think?
Under 12 weeks.
Less than 12 weeks?
I think so. In a majority of the restaurants.
Yeah, let's say like a majority or more. So 12 weeks. Shona, what do you think?
I think that for each person it's very different and it's very personal. So I think if you've had a contact, we have one team member who's lost we have one person on our team who's lost 2 of their family members to COVID. I can guarantee you she's probably going to wear a face mask until she feels comfortable taking that off. And then we have others who are just, they're ready for the guidelines to change so that they can take it off. So I think it's going to be an individual decision. When you have choice, and as long as we can let the people feel empowered around that decision, we have to be comfortable that some people want to continue to wear them.
Let maybe put another way, would you collectively be surprised if we were still doing face coverings a year from now? I
would not, actually. I'm probably in the minority on that, but I would not be.
I wouldn't be either. I mean, I travel pretty extensively to Asia, and I think it's one of those things where, like Shona said, it's going to come down to personal choice moving forward and how impacted that individual is. It's kind of the norm in different parts of Asia. And so I think now that it's hitting America, it's going to be kind of one of those things where it's acceptable to see and it's not as glaring.
So, I should...
In the last week or so here in Florida, with the restaurants opening up and, again, more people are dining outside than inside, it seems like. And you can even see staff members are having a difficult time with face masks already. So, and this is mostly, of course, independent restaurants because a lot of the chains have not opened yet here, and some have, some haven't. But I think what's going to happen there is it's going to be staff maybe telling the independent restaurateur that we don't want to do this anymore. So I don't know about that year thing, and I agree with all the comments about it's a personal choice. I think there are people that will wear them and wear them for a while. And there's a lot of people that just can't wait to get this off of their face and be able to breathe without sweating.
But I think we have to.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you've worn one in the kitchen, but it stinks.
It's hot and sweaty.
It's horrible.
It smells?
No, it's just tough. I mean,
it's just tough.
I mean, it's just horrible. And it stinks by the end of the night, that's for sure.
Well, I sort of feel like if you have bad breath, you become more aware of it because your breath is just blowing back in your face at that point. So, maybe that fixes bad breath.
It's more the sweat.
Yeah.
And I think there has to be guidelines around it, kind of like gloves. If somebody puts on a pair of gloves and wears them all day long, that defeats the purpose of gloves. So I think we have to have education around, face mask as well. And we've had to put some of that in place. So.
Yeah, I feel like I should know this. So, RJ, maybe in Asia and other places, restaurants, are they mostly doing like branded face coverings now, or where it is sort of a norm? Have you seen anything like that?
I haven't seen any branded ones, more just, they seem like they are personal face masks that people seem to carry.
Personal ones. Yeah. Interesting. So I think we could wrap up on community as the last topic. And this is such a big thing. So the headline is that consumers said they want to support independent restaurants, but they've been going more to chain restaurants because it's more obvious when a chain restaurant is open. Chain restaurants have drive-throughs. They have apps that let you order ahead and all these other ways that people just like to get food today. But what can chains do to show that you are a vital part of that community and a legitimate part of the community and not just a giant brand? So Steve, I'll let you sort of kick that off with what your stores do.
Yeah, so we're a little lucky that we're spread out a decent amount, and we only have 51 restaurants. So most communities we're in, they have no idea that we're a chain.
Yep.
And so we're considered the local restaurant already. We already engage locally each and every week with the guests, and we're part of the community and the stuff that we give back and different programs we have already. So for us, I think we're not necessarily treated so much like a chain. And I think from a continuing standpoint is you have to be there for your guests, right? You have to be there on every occasion. Make sure that when you are engaging, whether it's to go, take out, delivery, or when they're allowed to come back in, is you're taking that opportunity to make their day. Everything that's going on, this should be a time that they get to spend with you or have your food that it just makes them feel good. And so anything you can do to do that is going to ingratiate them to you, and then it just tightens that bond of the community.
Shona, so you're coming from the opposite perspective where you have thousands of stores. People know that Chick-fil-A is a big chain, but it also feels very personal to people as well. How have you managed to achieve that?
Yeah, so I will say it's not me. It's our operators and our team members. And I will say community. Yeah, I think community begins with your team members. And, one operator actually stands out so much in my mind. She actually, when team members were having a really hard time finding things, she basically put a store in her dining room because our dining rooms are not available. And she put much needed supplies in there that the team members could then come and take part in doing shared meals, those types of things. Each one has their own solution. Support wise, we made the decision, our company Chick-fil-A made the decision to support the individual operator by providing funds that they could use how they saw fit. So it was about $10.8 million that they could then in turn focus into their local communities, whether it be with their team members or with their families or with first responders or healthcare workers. We felt like the operator had the best vision and were much closer to the needs. Other things, we already had a partnership with Shared Table, so we fostered those partnerships with Shared Table and with other places that, we're feeding some school children in different places, meals to healthcare workers. I think one of the things I am just so encouraged about is team members who just randomly decided on their own to write words of encouragement to the guest. And that's just, I happen to get one myself. I'm like, that's super cool. I really needed that today. It was just great.
Yeah, that is so awesome. And, you mentioned, feeding healthcare workers. So one of the things that we see in the data that people say they're most heartened by and most want to see chains do is feed their local community. So for all of you, if your brands are in a position to do that and you could let it be known in your community that you're doing that, consumers will respond very, very positively to that act. And Shona, I couldn't agree more. If you get like a personalized note or something, that is the coolest thing. It's hard to train people to do that, right? But when they can, it's amazing. I have one last question that I think I sort of glossed over before, but as some stores are open at 50% or 25% capacity, can you help me understand the math? If you can only be open at 25%, how much of your staff do you need to operate at 25%, right? You need more than 25% of your staff to be at 25% capacity. We don't need 100% of your staff. What does that math sort of look like?
Well, for us, the fact that we're still doing quite a bit of takeout and to-go and delivery, that's helped. And then in addition to that 25% doesn't include patio, and we're fortunate that a majority or pretty much all of our restaurants have a decent sized patio, so the capacity level there is just the 6 foot social distancing amount. So we're able to do a little more there. And then in some of those, we're able to put tables in the parking lot or along the side of where the patio is to kind of expand that, so which we've done. And so we are, I wouldn't say we're bringing back full crews, but we're bringing back probably well over 50% on shifts. And then we're just again, we're so new into it. We're just managing the labor as we go, being a little bit more liberal with how we're spending the labor dollars right now, just to help out the people that are just coming back. Because what you don't want to do is them go from unemployment to only working, 40% of the time they were working, because that's really unfair to them. So we're just, taking it a step at a time. And the good news is that we're building business day over day and week over week. And so I think it's just going to continue to gain in the states that are open, and people start to feel comfortable about what's going on. And when they see the protective measures that we're doing to ensure that both our staff and the guests are safe, that they get a little bit less cautious about it.
Great. Thank you. I think that brings us to a close. I know, RJ, was there any final thoughts you wanted to share before we wrap up? You are muted, though.
You're on mute, RJ. There you go.
Yeah, so you had mentioned community, and that's one of the biggest things that our growers have been doing. I think in the communities, there's such an ingrained part of their community. They've been donating potatoes to those communities, helping out folks with giving them products and making sure that those families are fed in this difficult time. So, we've been trying to embrace that entire kind of mindset as a resource for not only the food service community, but for folks looking for new and interesting ways to enjoy potatoes. So just want to throw that in there.
Yeah, and I think we probably all feel the same way, but I feel like this whole chain of events has been the most, we're all in it together moment I've ever experienced. And I think it says something to the fortitude that we all have sticking through this. Just as a quick disclaimer, for those of you that have not yet registered for Datassential's webinar on Friday, our topic this week is what consumers want. It's all about what people want in a freshly reopened world. So come join us. And then, Kevin, I'm going to kick it back to you for closing comments.
Yeah, and I would say on that front, if you haven't been on his webinar every Friday, I mean, I've been on it every week. It's amazing. So I'd strongly encourage you to do that. But I want to say thanks to all of you, for this great information here, and to all the great members and sponsors that we have that have been on today. And many of you will be asking in the next few weeks, because we'll continue on doing this. Like I said, we'll do it again 2 weeks from now on Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. But also, we'll have the recording out earlier this time. So we're going to get the recording right away, do a quick edit on it so that we can thank our sponsors in it. And that will be up on the website soon. We'll send that out in an email or a newsletter soon. But we also want feedback from all of you as well. If there's any topics or things you want us to talk about on this, please let us know, because we feel like this is so important. I mean, the community that we have, the networking that we've always done face to face. This is how we're going to be doing this, and until we get to our meeting time later this year. So again, thanks to everyone, sponsors for all your support, members for your support as well. And let us know what we can do to help you. But thanks for being here, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Hey, so happy to connect with everybody.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.